So welcome. When Nick is able to join back in, I'll see if he can give a little introduction for himself as our latest and newest member. All right, so we had the posted agenda. I don't see anyone from the public on the phone, but any comments or other business that we need to take care of tonight, or any comments on the agenda? Doesn't sound like okay.
We're good.
Meeting minutes from April. Thank you, Virginia, for putting those together in Connie's absence. That was a great help. Any adjustments or changes to the minutes from last month?
They look okay to me.
We will accept them and move forward. All right, so first up on the agenda is Connie. It sounds like you had a chance to attend the Hinesburg Community Engagement Forum in May, earlier this month. If you could give us a debrief on some of your key takeaways from that discussion.
I certainly could. I'm just curious, if we only have Virginia for a half an hour, is there anything on the agenda, this goes back to revisions to the agenda, sorry, that we should absolutely make sure that we work on early in our meeting? Because I'm happy to talk about that forum, but I don't want to lose Virginia over something important.
Okay, I think you're right. Maybe we can move to the library ADU roundtable discussion, Virginia, since that is assigned to you on the agenda, and we can move Connie's comments maybe to the end of tonight's discussion.
Okay, sure. Yeah, the ADU thing is pretty short. Suzanne at the library wished to have a program on ADUs, and so she recruited me to help with that, and also somebody or other, Phillips, I forget his first name, from CHT. So the speaker from CHT is going to talk about the incentives and the money that's available for making ADUs right now. You know, you can get up to $50,000 towards an ADU if the conditions are right. So that's going to be one speaker, maybe 15 minutes. Tyler Mesha, the zoning administrator, is going to talk about the permitting process for an ADU. And then I have a couple of people who have said they are willing to talk about their experiences. So I got a list of the recent permits and COs for ADUs in Richmond from 2023. And I have a couple of people who are pretty willing, and one is an owner and also the builder who's actually building the ADU. I'm trying to get them to come together so they can talk about the process. And I have some questions. I'm going to moderate it. It's on June 8th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the library. So we hope people will come and ask questions of these speakers to get some interest going in ADUs. This one set of people that I have is talking about converting an attic into an ADU. So, you know, hopefully it'll be informative.
Okay. That's great. Yeah, I saw that come up on the calendar of events somewhere. Do you think either appropriate or you know, worthwhile to maybe have our that flyer that we put together there on hand? I think it's
sure. Yeah, we could do that. We could have I don't think there's any reason why we couldn't do that. You know, just to address the general housing. You know, when I introduce the topic, I'm going to talk a little bit about the general fact that we need to be able to have more housing, and the village way to do it is to do infill with ADUs and so forth. So, yeah, we could do that. I'll get the handouts from somebody. And
I'm assuming there's probably a bunch left at the office, or
at the office,
something like that.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
if-
okay. I'll get them from Keith then. Yep,
Yeah, and if not, I have the file. I could print them out.
sounds good. Yeah. Suzanne is going to do the publicity. Suzanne Crone, who's the events coordinator or something at the library. This was her idea, and so yeah, why not?
That's great,
So that's it.
Virginia.
That's the
Perfect.
end of that item.
Okay. Anything else on the agenda with Virginia?
The only other thing that is kind of in the general updates and discussion section here is I'm connecting with Keith last week and talking through like 2024 and then also the that letter from Hinesburg, Alex Weinhagen
Yes.
Yeah,
as well,
yeah.
which I thought was a great letter. Got us thinking about like, what are the levers that we have to that the town has to encourage subsidized housing, workforce housing in Richmond, right? And we had started kind of some ideation, really just pulling together a lot of the things that we've already been talking about. But that got me thinking around us as the committee, right? What are those facets in which that we have the ability to influence those levers, right? And so how can we, put together, maybe what that end product is, put together a document, a recommendation, which is something that I think the select board asked for anyways, as to how we could influence these items. Pulling from the work that Brandy did back in 2002, and then what we've been discussing more recently around like water sewer access, the information from Alex around like public-private partnerships, and figured like maybe we could list or talk about tonight some of what those levers are, and then ultimately piece them out and work on that individually or as a team, as a group, to put together what would it look like if we put some focus on that lever, like the water sewer. Like what would we want to see happen with water sewer if we were to further encourage housing, subsidized workforce housing here in Richmond. Same with the pros and cons of like a housing fund, right, in the community as well. So if that sounds good to folks to help provide maybe a little bit more direction, was thinking of spending some time tonight to pull from that list that is already in the agenda and see what other levers there are that we want to add to that. And then in future discussions, we can work on developing those strategies around it.
Yeah, and I would add that the ultimate goal here is to get a document to the select board on a silver platter. They're not going to do the work, and I don't know if they'll necessarily follow your recommendations, but I think on this subject they would. But there is nothing that the town is offering as subsidies or as a pathway or as an environment to promote subsidized housing. And with that's just closing the loop on what Mark's saying is we need to provide a document to the select board so they can have something to chew on and set that environment. There's nothing there. There's absolutely nothing there. And I think it's incumbent upon this committee to move that forward.
And the other thing that we might do from the Weinhagen letter is to get Carl Bolin, who's the head of their Affordable Housing Committee, to talk to us about what they did, because that committee was formed in 2006. So, that's a long time that they've been working on this. Our committee is pretty new. It's relatively new. We've been finding our feet. We've done some things, we can do more things, obviously, but it would be nice to have what they did. What kinds of things did you do, especially in the old, the original days when you first formed this housing committee? What was it like to get that environment going? What did you have to do? Public outreach a lot to get the YIMBY rather than the NIMBY? Did you, so I'd love to hear him talk more about what they did. And then, he goes on to say, well, we cajole and encourage this public-private partnerships. And well, how do you do that? Are there some shortcuts that you can tell us? So anyway, I'd like to hear from him. They've had a head start on us.
So Carl is coming in our June meeting
Yep, he'll be here next week or next month.
next month. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So I'm in
That'd be
support
good.
as well, Mark. I think you have to it's an elephant, you have to deal with it one piece at a time. So let's start figuring out which pieces we can help influence in a way of open transparency and collaboration with all stakeholders in housing, which there's a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And I think understanding the programs that are out there is key. I don't think we understand the programs, and that research has got to be done.
Definitely. You can't just jump into something.
Yeah.
Well,
And hi, Nick, how you doing?
Hello, sorry about that. I actually went to the town hall not reading the big messaging that said remote
Oh, no.
meeting, and then I instantly got there and turned around, and you were dealing with the terrible cell service from the center there to my house. But I'm here. I have decent Wi-Fi here, so I should be all right. And you should be able to hear me fine.
It's
So
super good.
apologies for that.
Glad you're here. Should we just quickly go around the room and just say who we are and, our history or anything like that?
sure, great.
Okay, Nick, I'm Connie, and I live up on Jericho Road, off of Jericho Road, near the Jericho border. So north of the school, so to speak, north of the middle school and elementary school. And I've been on the housing committee since it started, and I'm the clerk, which means I get to try to keep up with all of you taking notes. So that's part of why I'm here. Mark?
Yeah, welcome, Nick. Mark Hall, the chair of the committee here. Been on the committee a little bit less than Connie has. I think I was maybe 6 or 8 months after the committee started, maybe a year. And live up on Hillview Road. Been here in Richmond for about 6 years. Interested in helping to support our community navigate this process of getting housing to folks that need it. So,
Virginia?
Yeah, so I'm Virginia Clark. I'm the chair of the Planning Commission and principally a liaison with the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission used to do this work about housing, but we could never get anywhere. So we got the Selectboard to appoint a different committee, which is this one, to do the work, which is a full-time job, of housing, and in particular, affordable housing. It's a whole area that will take up your whole time if you let it.
Yeah.
So, and I am Mark's neighbor on Hillview Road. I've been here for about 42 years. And I am a retired veterinarian, so if I start talking about what dogs do or something, you'll understand where that's coming from. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of potential here, but it'll take a lot of, investigating on how we're going to do it. It's a difficult problem. Another one of those intractable problems that you just have to make your way through and try to do the best you can with all the competing goods that we have going. So that's all.
Great. Nick, do you want to say a little about yourself?
Sure. I'm up on Stone Fence Road, so on the Bolton side of Richmond. Been here about 3.5 years now, 4 years. Have 3 young kids. Forgot about one of them.
yeah.
which happens. Very interested in helping the community, especially around housing. My family's been involved in a handful of projects up in Canada around affordable housing, so was interested in joining this committee and learning more about sort of what Richmond is trying to do here and see what that looks like. And happy to be here. Happy to listen to, especially at the beginning, and be more active as I learn more.
Okay, and do you need introductions to Keith, or you already know?
I would love an introduction from Keith. I've emailed him more than most, but
Yeah. So yeah, I'm the director of planning and zoning. I've been your director for almost a year and a half now, and in a previous incarnation, I was your zoning administrator. Left for some unknown reason and then came back, and I often wonder for some unknown reason also. But here I am, and this is a committee that has an amazing amount of potential and influence on this subject, especially with the select board, which is the ultimate arbitrator of what we're going to do. And I'm here to support, and you can bounce off. You can ask me any question. There's no ex parte if you're talking to me. I'm not a voting member. And I do have a reputation for being unvarnished. And that might chafe some people, but I quite frankly don't care. But I am open to anything, any questions, and I'm again here to support you.
That's great. And welcome to Lisa, who's a guest and a select board member. Thanks for being here, Lisa. All right, so what serves us best next, Mark?
Yeah, so I'd like to just building on that discussion that we just had around like what are those levers, right? And what is maybe the bones of what that recommendation could be to the select board. Keith put in the agenda a number of items to start. And Keith, I am going to share my screen.
Yeah, let me give you those vast,
Okay.
amazing powers.
That is an important host responsibility, being able to share the screen, just as you talk to Josh. Just remember that.
I did take what was kind of in the agenda and just put them into a pretty bare bones document here, which I was hoping we could maybe just continue to like flesh this out a little bit with some ideas. So, you know, thinking about either what what we've learned over the past few years, right? What are those items that we could have an influence on to support that goal of encouraging subsidized workforce housing here in Richmond, right? And I think some of the things we talked about already, right? Partnership development, partners with development, partnership development and project advocacy. So developing those partners, right, that we have that are public and or private, and advocating for certain projects, right? I think we've been called upon to help advocate for certain projects, and that was definitely something that was mentioned in that email from Alex as well. We've talked a bit about water and sewer regulation policy revisions. I know, Keith, you included some rather lengthy documents in the meeting notes, setting up the water and sewer body here in Richmond.
Yeah, and that was basically for reference only. In case you wanted to go and use them, I just slapped them on the website.
Okay. There's strategies around tax abatement programs, incorporating those. We just mentioned understanding state and federal subsidized housing and assistance programs, housing fund, and then the development of community support, right? I think is being a big piece of that. So I don't think this is an exhaustive list, but just from experience here, is there anything that's missing that we want to add to this? And before I turn that over, just thinking like we could, go deep in any one of these, right? So where do we maybe want to explore first? And do we have some folks that are passionate about any one of these areas where we could further develop, like, what would our strategy be or our recommendation be? What do we need to learn or understand, and kind of go from there.
So just with respect to Alex Weinhagen's memo to Bard Hill, he was talking about inclusionary zoning. And I like, that was new to me. So is that part of state and federal subsidized housing assistance, or is that something completely different that is a tool we could consider?
Yeah, that's something that's completely different. It's a requirement of builders if they meet certain parameters they would have to develop subsidized housing. So it's basically a stick, not a carrot. And it does have a chilling effect, but it has its place, as Alex states in his well-crafted email. It would be something that the planning commission would entertain. And it really has nothing really to do with, well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, you guys need to figure out how you want to go forward on inclusionary zoning, and I would do a little bit of research on that. But typically it'd be, if a developer comes in with 20 units of housing, 5 of them or a certain percentage must be subsidized housing. You usually don't do it with smaller projects. That doesn't really, you have to have scale. In Richmond, there's really only 1 or 2 places currently right now that would be in, and that'd most likely be Jolena Court. But it should be inclusionary zoning should be district wide and town wide, and not just focused on one district. But that's my take as your planner.
Got it.
And the other thing, if I could just add a comment about some earlier conversations that I've had with Alex Weinhagen about inclusionary zoning, is that theirs hasn't worked that well because they just don't have big enough projects that make it worthwhile. I mean, the developer has the option of not doing the project here. You know, it's a stick. It's saying if you do the project, then you have to put in these units. And what we've heard is that if you have a small project with 20 units, the developers just say, I can't possibly do it, you know, so they don't build here. So there's that chilling effect for small projects. So I think we need to think about that. You know, it's not like, okay, we can just require, you know, some people think, oh, we'll just require some of this housing to be affordable. But if it's not going to work economically with developers, then there's no point in doing it because they're just not going to do those projects. They're not going to do them here. They're going to do them somewhere else. So, and while I am of the floor, so to speak, I had one other thing to add to the list, which I got from that letter, that Weinhagen letter, which is that looking for opportunities is something that we could have, you know, something that we could do, that we could actively be looking for opportunities for those partnerships to work, or, you know, for properties that would be suitable, or, and that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of outreach. But that's, according to that letter, that's where you get some of these projects from, is you go looking for them and you find them. So that's not very easy. And you kind of need a mandate, you know, people on the committee need to feel comfortable enough that they have a mandate to go talk to people. But anyway, so I just wanted to add looking for opportunities to your list there, Mark.
Right, great.
That different from the first bullet, which is partnership development and project advocacy?
Well, it would be tied in, yeah.
It might, yeah, maybe this is a sub bullet of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think.
Well, it's different though. It's different. It's looking for opportunities. It's looking for properties that might be suitable, you know, looking around, watching what's on the market. We need those partnerships too. Once we find an opportunity, that's when you go with the partnerships that you've developed. So I think yes, definitely they're related, but they have a slightly different beginning point.
Thanks. Got it. This is a plenty long enough list. If you're looking for more items, Mark, I don't know if we need more. But
Yeah, I mean, you know, is it comprehensive, right? Is there a gut check, making sure that we're not leaving something out there. I did look back at Brandy's report as well, just to make sure, like, some of her recommendations that she had, and I think I captured the
Mhm.
ones at least a little bit more directed towards the housing committee here as well.
Yep, yep, yep.
And if we're talking about outreach, then it seems like this program director at the library is interested in that kind of thing, like this ADU program. You know, she thought of that. She wanted to do it. So if we had any other, she would be a partner of sorts in terms of doing community outreach. She's always looking for topics to have a program about. So.
Okay, great. So I think from here, you know, at least my initial thought was, are there any, does anybody have any like desire, interest, penchant towards any of these topics to help further develop? Like, what does it mean to have, you know, understanding state and federal subsidized housing, right? That could, in my mind, take a form of, you know, connecting with our Vermont state partners, right? That provide housing assistance, doing some research, right? And at least building maybe an index of what are those programs out there that we could
So Mark, let me
take
ask you
advantage of.
about that, since as I perpetually feel like I'm learning all over again. The subsidized housing assistance programs, I think of like a HUD building, you know, that it's a block of apartments that people live in that has an administrator and has a lot of reporting requirements and has to be done, you know, with the right kind of agency and stuff like that. I'm looking at this list and going, what's the fit with Richmond? Which of these are most likely to help Richmond be part of, you know, I just going back to my community forum night with at Hinesburg, Amy Tomaso, who's the Vermont Department of Housing and Community Development, Community Planning and Project Manager for the state of Vermont, and is sort of like a ball of fire in a way. You know, she said there's toolkits and there's this and there's that. You can like support developers, you can do all these things. She had a lot of suggestions, but essentially her message was Vermont needs 40,000 more homes by 2030, and we're not getting there very fast. So, you know, and she can talk about why, and Mike Pichak was there, and an awesome town manager from South Burlington, Jesse Baker, really charged up people who have lots of ideas and thoughts about what could happen. But if you don't make it fit your particular environment, it's not going to get very far.
Right.
So, and that's my message from the Hinesburg forum. I mean, there's more details on that, but whatever your opportunities are, make sure that there's compatibility with the environment that you've got and the people that you've got to help make it happen.
Yep.
So like if we were going to work on water and sewer regulation, it would have to be in the context of what's possible in Richmond. What can we support in Richmond? So things like that.
I think you're spot on there, right? Like, you know, and maybe the term subsidized should be just taken out of that state and federal housing assistance, because there's that Virginia mentioned, like the ADU program that has some dollars tied to retrofitting or fitting up an ADU, right, on your property, right? Like I see that program as fitting with us. Or what was the Buttermilk program that they wanted us? I forget the
revolving loan fund.
Revolving loan fund, right? That's an available resource. So if there's a, you know, the next Buttermilk that comes along that says, hey, you know, how can we help you? Oh, we can help advocate by maybe using the revolving loan fund. But that had some strings attached to it as well, or some requirements attached to it as well, where the town needed to come and step in, right? And so how do we prepare to be able to use the revolving loan fund? So that section maybe of the recommendation could be like, hey, there's the ADU program, there's a revolving loan fund program, there's this. to take advantage of it, we recommend the town does X, Y, and Z so that the next time a developer comes along that says, hey, I want to build this project, we're ready for it.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense to me, Mark. I think figuring out where our opportunities and kind of clearing the path so that they don't drop like a bomb and have like minimal amount of time to respond to. I think we could do a lot to just sort of set the stage and make it possible to do those kinds of things.
And then the water sewer, right? I think that's something that Andrew and Nick, we have two other members that aren't here tonight as well. But Andrew mentioned, has an interest maybe in the water sewer piece, right? So maybe he could, not to sign him up, but take
Sign him
take a
up.
piece out of the water sewer piece and do some research, further research into, okay, what is it that we, step 1, 2, 3, what does the town need to do to expand water sewer? Right.
Money.
So I have a thought about that, which is that the policies, the financing structure is a problem of water and sewer. However, extending the water and sewer lines, I think the first thing that we ought to do is we ought to know what is possible. I mean, going back to Connie's point about what's possible in Richmond, let's make a map of where we think the water and sewer lines could actually be extended that would have some benefit. There's so much floodplain here. There's so much steep slopes. Where do we think, before we get into this contentious, probably, discussion about changing the financing structure for water and sewer, where are we really talking about? Are we talking about the gateway? We need to know what has happened at the gateway with water and sewer, that we've been trying to get water and sewer out there for 20 years. What about the south end of Richmond, East Main Street? What about the Huntington Road? Where, if we want to have either a housing fund that is going to finance water and sewer, or we're going to have a different financing structure, the town is going to pay for water and sewer, we need to know where the benefit is going to come in. So I would like to do that, and I'd like to get Andrew Mannix's help with that. He says he has developer friends who've already plotted it out, where it could go and how many units could be built there, and whether it's worthwhile to incur the expense of taking it in some direction where there's only going to be a few units built. So that's one thing that I'm kind of interested in doing is, and it has a planning commission connection, obviously. Planning it out, where would it go? Where would it usefully go? The other piece of that I would like to see is there are a couple of places in Richmond that have big community systems, wastewater systems, like the mobile home park. Well, can we work with them to utilize, if we don't have municipal water and sewer going out there, but can we utilize a big community system if it has a lot of hookups possibly left on it? Would it be possible to work one-on-one with that developer? The VYCC is also looking to put in a big community water system for all its employees. Couldn't we piggyback onto its community system? We don't have to limit ourselves necessarily to the municipal water and sewer lines if it doesn't look like there's a useful place for them to go. How about one of these community systems? So anyway, those are my interests.
What was the one besides the Riverside Mobile Home Park, Virginia?
The VYCC.
Oh, right. Okay.
So they are starting the process of a huge expansion. They want to go from 5 permanent employees to 40 permanent employees, and to have up to 100 seasonal kids. It's a program for developing responsibility and, work ethic and all that kind of stuff. So they would like to have 140 people on that property down there on East Main Street. They are going to have a good sized community septic system. And one of the inviting things to me about it is there's an easement on that property. There are several easement holders. One of them is Vermont Housing and Conservation. whose mission is combining housing and conservation. So possibly, it seems to me, you could get housing and conservation to be interested in maybe, having some affordable housing on part of that property. I don't know. There are so many, there are so many wrinkles to it. It's all eased, that land is eased and what have you, but it's a community system which is already in existence, and that's kind of what you need for affordable housing. You need a system that's already in place somehow, either municipal or something else, so that the whole cost of the water and sewer doesn't have to be borne by the developer who's going to say, "Nah, I don't really want to do that. It's too expensive." So,
Got it. Thanks. That was really helpful, Virginia. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's great. Virginia, I signed you up for you and Andrew for the water and sewer regulation policy revisions discussion exploration.
okay, great.
For me, I'm happy to look more into the state and federal housing assistance programs.
Okay, sounds good.
And pull that together. And this is not something that all needs to be done by between now and next time we meet, right? Like, I think I see this as ongoing discussions.
Yeah.
But and kind of starting that exploration process, right?
Yep.
So,
And the state is always doing something new. Like,
yes.
there's new Act 250 regulations, which I don't know if they passed or not, or did the governor sign that, or did he veto it? I don't really, haven't followed it, but, that's going to eliminate some Act 250 fees and so forth, which is a discouraging factor so that's an assistance program of sorts for developers. So finding out what happened this year would be a great start to that.
Yes. Okay. Anything else on the list that we think we want to maybe move above the fold, put as a higher importance that we want to investigate than others, or
Could
build a
we-
strategy around?
Could we revisit this list when we talk to Carl next month?
Yes. Yep.
And I know
Yeah.
Matt is interested in home ownership. So if we could tap into that, the affordable home ownership component, what's out there for that? How might that work? Could we partner with Habitat for Humanity or whatever, So maybe since he's not here, we could sign him up for that.
So go ahead, Keith.
No, I just like the arbitrary signing people up for things, that's all.
Yeah, you have to do that just exactly right. But anyway, so is that, so again, that's different than state and federal assistance. That's its own, that's like private agencies or what other builders or developers are doing. Or is it the issue just home ownership? Virginia?
What, for Matt?
Yeah.
I mean, this is, I don't know. Probably it's some kind of assistance program. It would be
Yeah.
some kind of assistance programs, but specifically tailored more to home ownership, and finding out if there are different programs that are for renters or for homeowners. Are there different programs, or are they all the same programs, or anyway,
Yeah,
we'll have to ask him.
Yeah, I would add that whole ownership pathway is really not something that the town itself would get involved in. That's something that a homeowner would have to do. Certainly can support it and get the information out, but it's not something that would present to the select board for them to take action on.
Yeah, unless
well,
there's,
yep.
As part of the strategy and maybe we, I think that the home ownership could fit into a number of these, right? It could be a strategy of like, hey, we have some property that's available. Habitat for Humanity Do you want to come in? Is this of interest to you? Maybe the town owns it or not. I know we've crossed that bridge.
Yeah,
with
looking
other
for
properties
opportunities, it would fit into there.
Yeah. So it could be, it could be under the federal subsidized housing assistance, right, piece, partnership development. I think it can go in any of one of the categories.
Yeah.
Number one.
Yeah, it's just something, it's easier for people to work on things that they care about. So,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, good list.
Okay. And Nick, I'm not auto signing you up for anything. I know you're just getting your bearings here, but unless there's something that like sticks out to you, I don't know your full background. Maybe you're like, oh, I am finance whiz and I know all about housing funds. I don't know. But
I will remain unassigned for now, but I will certainly
Okay.
be jumping in at some point once I have some more information.
no problem.
Nick, would it be helpful for you to see the report that the Housing Committee commissioned about a year and a half ago?
Yes, I would love that. I am I am certainly pro reading, except for the large font. This is a remote meeting sign today.
Yeah, so I'll send you a whole suite of good juicy stuff that you can read.
Perfect. And have we approved the meeting notes from last week? I just had some questions on that. I don't know if you guys did that while I was.
We
trying to-
did,
did,
yeah, but go
yeah.
ahead and ask questions.
There was some talk, and I think that it was a really good conversation around the term affordable, what affordable means. I have notes, the note at the end says that Oborn, and I apologize if I'm messing up his name or her name, was going to get a second draft of those terms. Did we?
We did not. I did not. I am the Oborn.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. No, we didn't get around to that this time around. So that is
Okay. Okay.
yeah, the Planning Commission is working on that too. And we would like everybody to be in sync with
Yep.
the way we use these terms, because out there in the world, when people talk about affordable, they just mean something that somebody on an ordinary salary could afford. It's relatively affordable. And then there's this whole set of things that is truly affordable by HUD standards, and there are all kinds of reporting requirements and all that. So we would just like to get it so that when we talk about affordable housing, we all know which one of those we're talking about.
Yeah, 100%.
Working on it.
And I think that ties into a lot of the stuff we're talking about here. It's very hard to sort of have a conversation about, I think, about like federal and state subsidizing without knowing what our goals are. Like Richmond average income is about 14,000 more than state, which is pretty good from my calculations. You guys might have better numbers. So the definition of affordable housing in Richmond based on Richmond income levels might be different than what the state considers under the same programs. So
Yeah,
I think that definition would be helpful.
Yeah, so I'll definitely forward you a bunch of that stuff. I mean, you could also look back at previous meetings. If you go onto the homepage of the Housing Committee, all the meetings are cataloged. And all the documents that were part of those meetings are still there. So that might be the easiest way to go to get you up to speed on that. Also, folks, I just sent you a water and sewer capacity not study, but it's something that our engineers have to do on a yearly basis. And you just need to scroll down in that email I sent you, and you'll see the boxes with all the empirical data of where we are. And that landed a couple weeks ago or a week ago. So it's pretty fresh data where we're at. So just as far as sewer capacity goes, we are at 35.3%.
So
Cool.
definitely room to go.
We got some, yeah.
Plenty of room to go.
All right. Well, I think we're good here for right now. There's something to think about. Well, I think I'll bring this up each meeting as an agenda item to kind of continue to talk through and build upon, and we can continue to develop these different categories.
So I'm about to go to this middle school
Yep.
concert, but it was great meeting with you all, and yeah. next time.
Au revoir.
Great. Thank you,
See you
Virginia.
later. Yep, thanks. Bye.
All right. Keith, did you want to talk at all about the select board letter to support the Buttermilk loan application?
You know, I'm really not the person to talk about that, to be honest with you, because the whole process behind that was flawed. It was sent through the back door and not the front door. It's really something that Virginia should talk about at this
Okay.
point. So,
Okay, we can maybe table that for next month. And all right, well, I think the last identified agenda item was a debrief of the Hinesburg Housing Committee engagement. And I know we've jumped around quite a bit here. But Connie, you attended that session on May 8th. And you have any key points that you wanted to share about that?
I did a really brief blurb during our
Right.
discussion on your list. So there's nothing in there that I would say is, oh, we've got to try this. Hang on, let me scroll back there as I lost my place a little bit. In her conversation with Hinesburg, which is in some ways relatable to Richmond, Amy Tomaso talked about a designer guide for the missing middle home, you know, where you know, it's not like a tiny you know, studio apartment, and it's not like a beautiful big house with, you know, 7 acres or something like that. And you know, where's the missing middle home for Vermonters? And so her designer guide, and it isn't hers, but the designer guide that she talked about was to help people, including, you know, ordinary folks in a town, as well as builders and developers, understand how you can change your expectations of what housing is by looking at a bunch of different kinds of types of housing. So she was educating people about that. And I think the whole point of the community forum was community awareness, raising, and education. It wasn't like an action-oriented forum. It was, you know what's going on and know what other towns have done. So Jesse Baker from South Burlington had a lot to say about, they've been very actively engaged, as you probably can tell if you should drive through South
oh yes,
Burlington every 6 months. It looks extremely different than the last time. And their work on diverse housing, new energy requirements, what they're doing for transportation. It's a very comprehensive approach, and they've really invested a whole city function into thinking about this. I mean, she's the manager, but there seems to be lots of resources and support for thinking about, so what's South Burlington going to do next? And she was really articulate, easy to follow, friendly, approachable. She'd be, if we were trying to get more involved as a town, that would be a good resource, but we're not South Burlington, and that's not a goal. So, and we probably can't be South Burlington. So she talks about local option taxes, for example, as ways to raise money for stuff. And it's all in the context of, well, and she said this maybe 4 times, what do you see for your community? What do you want to be? What's your vision of yourself as a community? And then figure out how you're going to get there. So that took me to it has to fit. It has to fit the community. It has to fit the picture of what you want to be. And I think I told you all already, I had the experience when I was illicitly handing out flyers during town meeting day, which is a different story, Nick, but anyway. One of the, there was a couple, my age probably, not like old, but old, who were sitting up in the bleachers, and I handed them the flyer and they said, oh, we just don't want Richmond to change at all. We like it exactly the way it is. And that is a belief that could be true. It's like, okay, I don't think that can work, but that is a consistent feeling I get from the community is just take your hands off of it. It's fine the way it is. Don't change anything.
Yep. Yes, I would agree with that 100% because I live it every day.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
So So ultimately, there were some super thoughtful people who spoke in the Q&A afterwards. And that kind of launched into other, what I would call spurs of conversation that were important. And just having that conversation and having people who are knowledgeable begin to talk to other people and create a conversation that's important for the community gives you more to build on. Just like Virginia's comment of, oh, we have someone in the library who thinks this is a good topic. It's like, don't lose that name. You know, that person will be able to help us continue to build, and similar for other members of the community that you could find in different ways who have a role in helping us have these kinds of thoughtful conversations that help people realize, oh, maybe some change is like not only necessary, but good.
I see a position for you, Connie, on that list that I was showing around,
Uh,
you know, that community feedback, community partnership, right?
Yep.
Piece as
Development of
being,
community
some
support.
development of community support as being something
Yeah.
that you seem of interest.
Yeah, well,
for
I was
you.
putting together a community resource list. It's like, this is probably a thing that takes like, a thousand flowers or a thousand candles or whatever the right analogy is. It's not just one thing. It's a lot of things that different people can do when you've got the creativity to think of, well, what is that opportunity and how could, the senior citizens get interested in that, or the churches help, or the library committee, or recreation, or, how about transportation, or how about the Richmond Racial Equity Committee, or how about the, summer camps? I mean, there's so many different ways to connect with people in our community. We don't tap even a tenth of them. So there's lots of community support raising we could do if we knew what we wanted to ask for. And then the message has to be really succinct, like that flyer was. The flyer was like, oh, this is for people in Richmond who are just getting to be aware that housing is a thing and affordable housing matters if we want to have teachers and police officers living in this town.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm glad to sign up to development of community support. Yes, exactly what that would look like. It depends on, well, the message has to fit the media, the channel. And so knowing what the message is part of that.
I will say that we do have the town plan having to be worked on beginning next year. And having our ducks in a row prior to that, I think that's a great forum by which to start introducing these, not start introducing, to continue introducing them. So you keep that in mind, keep that in your back pocket, is that we're required to do that starting next year.
Mm-hmm.
So we should probably start it this year, to be honest with you. And
Yeah.
but that's a planning commission deal, and we are up to our necks and stuff right now. So
Yep. Okay. You won't miss those sidewalks at all. Yeah.
well, no. I won't. I think it's sad that we've gotten to that point, and then
Yeah.
it was the plug was pulled.
Yeah.
But it's fine. It's fine.
Everything comes back around. I promise.
Oh, it's a pendulum. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So yeah, I had some things that I think would be good for you, Nick, to see. Keith, when you send that email, can you CC me on it so that I can see what the balance is of what you maybe didn't send that I had on my list. But I was just thinking like the flyer, so you can see that, Nick. The research we did last year on the town land. And I don't know if, hopefully I can find a copy of it. We had a little snafu where we lost our Google Drive that had a lot of our documents on it. But I'll see if I can find that. The Brandy report, which is the Richmond housing study that we talked about. Where's at least 3 things that I think would be good for you to kind of see and catch up on as well.
What was that first one, Mark? You said it
The
was
flyer that we did.
the flyer, but then there was
flyer.
another report that we did besides
Oh,
the.
remember we did the research on the town land that was possible for
Yes,
development.
yes.
Right.
That was your PowerPoint. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, the PowerPoint, right? Which out of that came Brown's Court discussion and, that
Yeah,
whole,
fun experience. Yes.
yes,
Good.
fun experience.
And,
Yes.
and a good learning opportunity it was.
Yes.
So
Okay.
do
That'd
we
be
have,
appreciated. I'm also going through all the meeting notes right now from the beginning to see what's there. There's some housing data in here. It looks like they started with and Mark, you did join, I think, on the third meeting. But yeah, there's a definition here of what they're looking at for affordable. They also sort of broke down in the meeting notes the percentages of, they mostly focus on the percentage of income that's spent towards housing, which I think is helpful.
Yes.
And then there's a lot of links to Google Drive stuff that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, that doesn't work. Exactly.
But
Okay.
yeah, anything you guys send over, I'll read pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'll probably do that right after the meeting here. I'll just send you some links real quick.
Well, I think that was the
Sorry.
agenda for the evening. Is there anything that? Oh, go
Sort
ahead.
of quick follow-up. Do we have like a win list here of like what the committee has successfully done since it looks like 2000? The first meeting notes are from 2000.
Virginia did write up something. I'll have to see if I can dig that up. There was the bullet points of some of the things that we were involved in and some of the things that we put together.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think that helps us figure out sort of what historically we've been, or from my perspective, what historically we've been successful at getting across the line, where there's support from the select board, et cetera, and what the housing committee would be doing.
Yeah, I think you're going to find that there hasn't been a lot of meat on the bone. As far as the select board, there's no programs in place. It's basically a blank slate. It's been a lot of tail chasing, to be honest with you.
And why do you think that is?
I think that is due, me personally, I think that it has to do with the makeup of the board. The board changes every 2 years or so. I think that has something to do with it.
This board?
No,
Or the select board?
The select board's the legislative body, so.
Yeah. I was at most of the meeting on Monday.
Yeah. Yeah. Whee!
So you think it was that the housing committee would be putting forward initiatives and then the select board didn't get around to supporting them or implementing them?
Yeah, I would let the committee answer that. I've only been on for about 1.5 years, so.
I'd say from a committee standpoint, we've been kind of all over the place. We've kind of been trying to see what shoe fits, I suppose, and what is our role. So I think, kind of as Keith mentioned, right, there wasn't always a real specific mandate from the select board or the planning commission to say like, hey, go figure this out, right? And so we've been just trying to see, what is our place and where we fit. So we've helped with some various reports and recommendations. We ran that market, the Richmond housing study, and we helped with the support of some zoning changes to the residential commercial district downtown. The planning commission was working on, and things like that. So
yeah, and I did not mean to make that sound offensive. I'm mostly
No,
no.
It's a really good question of how do you measure whether, the time you spend in something is like moving the needle, but the needle is a complicated needle and there's a lot of people hanging on it. So it's a pretty thoughtful process. In some ways, and I'm calling up something that I think was on the agenda, but maybe I'm wrong, was committee priorities and focus through 2024. Is that a separate conversation from the document that you were helping us create, Mark, or is that part of the same thing?
In my mind, I don't think so, but Keith, I don't know if you had a different piece on that piece.
As far as what, I'm sorry.
The line item around committee priorities and focus through 24.
Yeah, that's, I do not. I mean, I have to
Okay.
rely on what the committee wants to do and I'll support that.
Okay, but it's sort of when we had an item that said setting the environment and pathways for subsidized and other housing, you know, that's where I was, writing down, that was the agenda item where I was putting together the document that Mark was creating for us. But that seems closely related to what are our priorities, like we'll get there when we finish working on that document.
Yes.
Okay.
My mind, I think they're the same.
But
Or
in,
similar.
but in a way, having a win list helps us understand where we've been and where we could also go as well. So I think Nick's suggestion is pretty good. And the other question that I had was, in the last meeting, you had a long discussion about affordable housing definitions.
Yep.
Was there anything left over from that needed more work, or is it that discussion is done? It was a long discussion and
Yeah, I think that it needed, based on what the minutes state, I was to develop a more pristine document than what I had presented before. Well, I guess the document was pretty pristine, but it needed to be fleshed out a little bit, and I think that's what everybody's looking for, is to have that. Quite frankly, I dropped the ball on that on the way down to this meeting. I didn't even think of that.
so maybe the next meeting?
Yes, definitely have that on my list.
Okay. So, so things that I have written down for the next meeting: affordable housing definitions, select board letter on support for Buttermilk loan, right?
Yep.
And then Carl is, and Carl, I think gets first place on the agenda, Carl Bolin.
Yes. Yep.
Because he has a housing committee in Hinesburg later on in the evening, and he really can't be in two places at once. So he needs to be first if he's going to be on an agenda.
Yep, I have those three things, and then I think the final piece would be to check in on the strategies document that we were just talking about. That's kind of like, I guess, as Keith put it, that's just general updates and discussion item, like ongoing item that we kind of keep on the agenda.
Got it. Okay. All right. That helps me a whole lot. I'm sorry I missed the last meeting, and now I'm kind of like catching up a little bit.
Any other business we want to talk about tonight?
Next meeting is June 26th. Just wanting to make sure that works for at least some of us.
I don't see why not.
Keith, you won't be there, right? This is
Oh,
our,
I don't know. I mean, I mean,
Well, if we're calling him in to talk about affordable housing definitions, maybe he needs to be there.
I would provide the document,
Okay.
not necessarily the enter key to start the meeting.
Okay.
So, and I mean, what it comes down to is my bandwidth. I mean, I
Yeah.
do 5 meetings a month, and that really, it actually always morphs to 8 because of the select board.
yeah.
It's just not tenable for me. That's not
Yeah.
healthy. So,
Yeah.
but with this committee getting some really good direction and going on a good path, I certainly can call out time to be at the meetings, no doubt.
Okay.
It's about cost benefit.
So we have to earn his time, is what he's saying.
Yeah, exactly. It's a cost
And be
benefit.
productive.
It really is. I mean, to be honest with you.
All right.
Okay. So yeah.
So
we can-
sometime in the next month, Keith, you're going to tell us how we host the meetings.
Yes. In the next probably week.
Great. Okay.
I'm not going to leave that hanging. I forgot to tell you, it's hanging over my head right now too. If I want to get it done, I got to get it done. And if I don't, then I'll be there.
Thanks.
So that's all there is to it. It's all good.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your help. It's great to have you here. It's really nice. You're always saying things that are useful and helpful. So,
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
all right.
Okay.
Okay,
Any
I
other business?
think we're good.
All
Pleasure
right,
meeting all of you.
we'll
Thanks.
call,
You
we'll
got
call
you,
it. Thanks for joining, Nick. Appreciate it.
Look for my email, Nick. I got a couple things already in the queue for you.
Perfect. Love it.
All right,
Great.
talk to you soon, guys.
Take
Bye.
care.
All right.
You all.
Yep, bye.
Bye-bye.